Welcome back, Wargamers, to Khorne Week, and today we're focusing on the man himself, Korghos Khul. If you're not familiar, Korghos Khul is a mighty Lord of Khorne. This really just means he's a Chaos Champion who leads an epically massive Khorne warband. His personal one is called the Goretide. Going back to his humble beginnings, the first time we really know about Korghos Khul is actually when the kind of doorway to Realm of Chaos opens up and Khorne sends his initial forces. It turns out there were mortals living in the Realm of Chaos. These are people probably who are dedicated to the Chaos Gods in the old world. Though Korghos didn't really exist back then, there are mortal contingents in the Realm of Khorne is what I'm trying to say. And so when the gates do open up and the Age of Chaos begins, Korghos Khul is at this point an aspiring Deathbringer, and it actually is true that he is the first in the Realm of Fire. Literally the first guy to walk through kind of that tear in reality and step foot in the mortal realms. And at that point he stops and he basically makes a prayer to Khorne and says, "I will claim this land for you," which is a big promise. Now, in yesterday's video, we talked about the Path of Skulls, so we know where his Path of Skull, at least from our perspective, starts. He's pretty far along. He would have been a normal warrior, acceded to the ranks, become an exalted Deathbringer rather quickly because of how brutal everything was. Like he stepped into the realms an aspiring Deathbringer, but would have quickly elevated himself, I imagine, very fast. But because of the Path of Skulls, we know where he's headed. He wants to become the leader of a warband, and then if he's claiming that he's making a vow basically to Khorne that he's going to claim the entire realm, which these things are roughly the size of 3 Earths, I think we kind of deduced from the Realm of Death, assuming they're all somewhat comparable in size. So this is a huge ask. And his ultimate goal really is to please Khorne enough to ascend to demonhood, become a demon prince of Khorne. Now we lose him for a little bit. We actually lose him at that point and reunite with Korghos Khul at the start of the Age of Sigmar, when Sigmar sends the Stormcast Eternals initially and opens up the Realm Gates. And by this point, Korghos Khul has come a long way in his promise. He has destroyed dozens and hundreds of kingdoms. I really think in Warstorm they talk about him taking out other kingdoms, and there are different notes where he comes into huge battles against other mighty lords of Khorne who made similar promises, but they're pretty few and far between. There's just generally enough space in the realm so these guys don't have to attack each other yet. But it is noted that at this point, most of the good guys are smashed in the Age of Chaos, and so there's not many worthy fights, so it gets harder and harder for him to make himself worthy to Khorne. That is until the Stormcast Eternals arrive, and he sees an instant way, this is how I can please Khorne. I can eliminate these guys. These are worthy. So he kind of got in a rut, and then when the Stormcast arrived, he became super jazzed. The Goretide by this point was a continent-sized army. It was just endless dudes. And so to move those kinds of resources, the people resources really, was an immense task for an amazing leader. And rather than being the Deathbringer that we knew who first started, he has now kind of escalated into a mighty Lord of Khorne who has taken on some very drastic alterations. Because as you know, as you walk the Path of Skulls, Khorne gives you several gifts along the way. And Korghos Khul has received many of these gifts. The first one being just super strength. He is an incredibly strong being. He has an unnaturally long life. He's lived for centuries. We don't have an exact timeline as of yet as to how long the Age of Chaos was. If he was the first one in Akshi and the first guy there when the Stormcast re-entered, his lifespan at that point would give us an accurate measure. But we don't really know those things, but we do know hundreds of years passed. And Khorne has sustained him purely for the fact that he likes what Korghos Khul is doing, he's saying all the right things, he's backing it up with actions, and so Khorne rewards him to see how long he can keep this game going. Khorne has also given him an axe. This is actually one of the most defining features in the model when you play the game. The reality-splitting axe is able to kill even immortal beings. The Stormcast Eternals get sucked into it. Basically, it tears a hole in reality and destroys pretty much anything it comes across. And he earned this after a campaign against some place called the Scorched Keep. We're given no details about that, but it is important to note that some of these gifts are direct responses to particular military actions that really pleased Khorne. Like if you make him generally happy, he'll give you strength and long life, but if you do a decisive thing that's like, yeah, that's my guy, he gives you a pretty cool on-point gift. So that was for destruction of a place called the Scorched Keep. He also received this blood-soaked armor, the actual hardened blood carapace that you see around the model. It's kind of hard to describe what it actually is looking like, but it is incredibly cool looking. And here and that, after countless acts of violence, basically the blood splashed on him and just kind of grew crusty and hard, and then Khorne forged that on his body into a piece of armor. The next gift is kind of a more interesting one, and I really like this. It is a kind of a mental domination ability. So basically, he can control all but the strongest willed. We see this kind of willpower theme go across Archaon and Gordrakk from Destruction Armies, things like that, where their minds just kind of project this like, you will be subject to me, and all but the most willful and strong personalities can resist it, right? It just causes despair in their enemies and subjugates them. This is also allows him to lead his martial forces. You get a whole bunch of murderous psychopaths together, and it's his willpower that binds them and says, you're not going to kill each other, we're headed towards a destination, follow me, and then they follow. So that's kind of what that power is really for. It's to see how well someone can lead this kind of merry band of serial killers. Which would be a necessary gift if Khorne's like, oh, this guy has real potential, let's give him a small army, let's give him a large army. Like, that kind of willpower and being able to move people needs to be magnified. And the last gift, and certainly the most kind of recognizable of a Mighty Lord of Khorne, is the Fleshhound. Now, Korghos' personal Fleshhound is called Grizzlemaw, and we'll talk about him in just a second. But each of these things is a boon along his kind of path of skulls. This is his ascension story written in these gifts. Now, Grizzlemaw is a really interesting gift. The Fleshhound kind of serves as a two-sided sword. See, here's the thing. On one hand, it's the most obvious sign of Khorne's approval. If you have a personal demon of Khorne at your beckoning, how far can you possibly be from Khorne liking you enough to make you one of those things, right? To make you a demon prince. Because demons are an obvious piece of Khorne himself. And you get to have one beside you as a badge of authority and approval, and Grizzlemaw really cements to others exactly what Khorne's favor is, right? Who does Khorne love? He loves Korghos Khul. On the practical level, the Fleshhound also has an item called the Collar of Khorne. Now, this is a kind of a famous thing. Khorne's demons typically have something called the Collar. It is sort of like a null zone for magic. Khorne hates magic. He thinks it's super despicable and tricksy and all those kinds of things. Not honorable, not blood-giving, things like that. So what he does is he equips his demons with these collars that shut down magic in a given area. In the tabletop game, this lets you kind of unbind spells as if you were a wizard, even though you don't have any wizards in a Khorne-themed army. So he has very practical uses as a combatant. In the book Warstorm, Grizzlemaw is really awesome. He goes toe-to-toe with Stormcast quite a bit. He's able to shut down magic and just lends his support in that way. But that's only one side of the sword. The other side is that he is a watchdog, and not in a good way. At this point, in the kind of Path of Skulls, you have not only gained Khorne's attention, but his interest. And so he sends the Fleshhound almost as an emissary to watch you, to really understand you as a person. Because yes, he's going to fight with you and help you and cement your authority and all those kinds of things that we talked about earlier, but he's also going to watch you with a keen eye. If you slip up and fail to honor Khorne, this dog is going to eat you. Right? The Fleshhound will literally just turn and kill you. He acts as a constant reminder of the cost of glory and failure. You need to succeed to be glorious, to glorify Khorne, because the only alternative is in the maw of that beast sitting right beside you. And more so than any other point, like you can reach a point where you become an aspiring Deathbringer and probably don't go very further because, Korghos Khul's been around for hundreds of years. It's possible to just have an aspiring Deathbringer underneath someone for hundreds and hundreds of years. But when you reach this point of having a demon at your side, there's no turning back. You can't slow down anymore because if you do, you get killed. At this point, you're in that home stretch for becoming a demon. And that's where we see Korghos Khul at this snapshot of right before Ascension. Now, in the book Warstorm, which if you are interested in Khorne stuff at all, the opening to the Realmgate Wars series, Warstorm particularly, but there's also two other kind of side stories going on in there. Really great stuff for getting to know Korghos Khul. There's a lot of great things that are very Khorne-ish in that book. But the Korghos Khul's one is very fascinating because we see him, he has this fortress built in the Brimstone Peninsula. He has a epic, massive pyramid of skulls. This is his offering to Khorne, to say, yes, I'm worthy. I have proved it by slaying like continents worth of kings and things like that. But he's looking for just the right head to put on the actual top, like the actual point of this pyramid. He needs that one kind of missing ingredient, someone who's truly worthy, and he's having trouble locating him. As we talked about earlier, most of the resistance in Realm of Fire is being just shattered. There are pockets of resistance, there are always races that were hiding and things like that. But to find that true king that he needs to find, he's really struggling to locate them. And then all of a sudden the Stormcast Eternals appear, and he sees Vanus Hammerhand, and he thinks to himself, that is the skull that I need. That's the guy to top off this pyramid. And so Vandus wants to clear the pyramid away from a realm gate that's nearby, and Korghos obviously wants to kill Vandus to get his head. In that story, Vandus actually comes in, basically into the camp, and they fight their way off. Korghos takes one of the second in command, cuts his head off, because this is an axe that basically prevents the Stormcast from turning into lightning and shooting back to his ear. So he can like kill them. Cuts off his head and is carrying the head of this second in command Stormcast up the mountain of pyramid of skulls. And right before he places it on top, Vandus calls him a coward for not fighting him, because it's not general to general. He killed the second in command. And the problem is that Korghos could have put the skull in there and ascended to Daemonhood. The problem is that you can't leave a challenge like that unanswered when you're a Khorne war boss. So he puts the skull down, he turns around, he slides down the pyramid of skulls in what has to be the most death metal awesome cover band photo ever, and comes and meets Vandus face to face. Now, I'm not going to spoil what happens next because Korghos has a really cool story arc, and I just absolutely love it. But what I will say is this, is that we don't really have many characters that are so close to attaining their goal of Daemonhood, right? When you read a lot of these Chaos books, the Nurgle guys tend to be very pleased with where they're at. They're not really striving to go further. There's not a lot of Nurgle warband leaders who are like, I gotta get the next rank and all kinds of things. They're like, well, if Papa Nurgle gives me, that'd be cool, but if not, then that's okay, right? They're very mellow. Slaanesh guys, they just want to have fun. Tzeentch, it's more about the plotting and the plans and intelligence than it is about rank and hierarchy necessarily. But with Khorne stuff, we see someone who's like, he's had to earn this every step of the way, gone through a very rigid rank structure, and is just about to achieve everything. Remember, we talked about in the Path of Skulls video, this costs you everything, and what you gain is something that can never be taken away. Well, right now, we see Korghos Khul as someone who has everything to lose right now, because he's given away so much. Vandus shouting at him and challenging him right in that moment changes everything for him, because at this point, he can't claim Daemonhood, which was obviously his ultimate goal, and because of the events that ended in Warstorm, he now has to make up more ground. He has to do more pleasing to Khul. Grizzlemaw's not happy, his little guard dog is sitting next to him, so he has a lot of ground to cover. Now, the arc of Korghos Khul does not end in Warstorm. It actually carries all the way through the Realmgate War series, and we have no reason to think that he's not a character even still in Malign Portents. Remember, these guys are functionally immortal as long as they can keep pleasing Khorne. He does show back up towards the end of the Realmgate War series, where he takes a small army of demons and is trying to once again crush Vanus Hammerhand. Some incredibly cool things happen. What's nice is like the Stormcast Eternals, because they can be reforged, don't always have to win. They can lose things and still not be deleted completely. And I'll have a video covering the Realmgate Wars where we'll dive into that, a little more spoiler alerty for that. But suffice to say, Korghos Khul plays a pivotal role in the Realmgate War series. His main focus is in Warstorm in the opening books, but he comes back around towards the end and is a real powerhouse. But why is Korghos an awesome character? Well, for one, he's very understandable, right? It's kind of hard to get in the mindset of some of these demons where they operate on multiple levels and they kind of see things very differently. But we understand the idea of someone who's going down a path and it feels like they can't ever stop, right? You have a singular goal in life and you can't change course. He's at that point. And if you do read Warstorm, which I recommend you do, Korghos is kind of a mechanism for a lot of cool things. So, for example, like when I was reading fantasy books, Warhammer Fantasy Battles books, about Khornate warbands, it was more just tribal, we just love blood, just love killing and those kinds of things, but you don't really see, how does this warband function? Like, why are they not just constantly killing each other and those kinds of things? But when you see Korghos interact with the people below him, the way he moves his army, the way he kind of interacts with other heroes and things like that, you get a sense for like, okay, he has this dominating will presence that just like projects, and like Grizzlemaw helps project that. And he's kind of the linchpin that lets you see like how a Khorne warband functions and the kind of things that they do. And so he has incredibly cool fortress, and so they kind of describe that. It takes a 2-pronged attack to be able to get in there. You really get a sense for how amazing a Khorne warband can be through the lens of Korghos Khul and how he set his stuff up in the Brimstone Peninsula in Akshi. There are some really cool moments in his storyline where if you read it and then step back and think about it, you know, kind of like him surfing down the side of a pyramid of skulls, like that is a super awesome thing. That is legitimately cool. There's a few of those moments. There's when he summons Blood Crushers, the demons who ride juggernauts. He basically like stamps the ground and the whole thing turns to like mud, but it's like dirt and blood rather than water and dirt. And so like he summons them forth and gives them orders, and you see him commanding demons because they follow him too. All these kinds of things that you know, like, hey, this is kind of what a Khorne warband is. This is what it could be. These are the epic things that it can do. This is how demons and humans interact. It's how warband leaders and subjects, I mean like the Blood Reavers and Blood Warriors and all that stuff, interact. And so he's a great conduit for letting us see how these warbands operate, which kind of adds a lot of character and flavor to them rather than just the kill, 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 blood, blood, blood thing that we saw before, where it's like, how does this work kind of thing on a more practical level. And friends, that's everything I have about Korghos Khul. He is an awesome, awesome model. I love the fact that they gave him a character war scroll as well as a generic Mighty Little Khorne. I hope to see a multi-kit at some point where we can kind of customize our Mighty Little Khornes, but that's just a pipe dream. But you should absolutely be playing him on the tabletop. He is an epic character with some cool narrative devices. And tomorrow, we're going to take a look at his followers, his immediate leaders and lieutenants right beneath him, the Gore Chosen. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming.